In video number 2, we are going to look at enlarging, reducing a master formula, basic ratio and proportion, or dimensional analysis, looking at formulas that list their quantities in metric, okay, because it can be written into parts versus grams. And so you'll see your gram and your milliliters, and also factor method of solving your answers. Now, semi-solid comes typically with the formulations written in grams. They're by weight. They're made by weight. And so this is a recipe of simple ointment where the ingredients are wool fat, hard paraffin, cetosterol alcohol, yellow or white paraffin. And here each is given its own item in terms of quantity listing. 50 grams, 50 grams, 50 grams, and white paraffin or yellow adding up to 50 grams. Now you may ask yourself, why are they having yellow or white paraffin? It depends on the product that you're going to make. Normally yellow soft paraffin is used to make ointments that are going to carry ingredients which are dark, right? And that looks kind of not so beautiful. Whereas the white soft paraffin can be used for ingredients accepting a white powder, so to speak. It's for aesthetics. Now, here we're looking at emulsifying ointment BP. This is what I said when a formula may be written in parts. And so emulsifying wax is 3 parts, white soft paraffin 5 parts, and there you go. Liquid paraffin is 2 parts. So you may ask yourself, but it's liquid paraffin, why are they having it in parts? Because semi-solids are normally written in grams and each occupy a part of a formulation. And this is where pharmaceutical calculations takes into consideration specific gravity or the density of a liquid, so that instead of weighing the liquid paraffin by weight, by parts, we can easily use the density and specific gravity and convert it into milliliters. Now let's look at this one, salicylic acid and coal tar ointment APF. Here salicylic acid is a powder, so that's 3 grams, but they have listed the coal tar solution as 3 ml. And so you really have to read the recipe carefully to see what and how it's written. Look at it good. White soft paraffin is 50 grams, but the emulsifying ointment is to QS 2. It's been used to add up to 100 grams. And so if we want to know emulsifying ointment, how much we need for this formulation, we would need to get the density or specific gravity of the coal tar solution, convert the 3 ml into grams, add all the grams and subtract it from 1,000 to know how much emulsifying ointment will be needed for this formulation. So this is a formulation that I could lift from here and do a separate recording on using density and specific gravity to move from a gram weight to a milliliter volume, where you weigh as opposed to measure, or measure as opposed to weigh. Let's look at this one, zinc and castor oil ointment. Zinc oxide is a powder, that's in gram. Castor oil is a liquid, it's in gram. Cetosterol alcohol are like pellets, that's gram. White beeswax is like candlestick, you know, a tough candlestick, that's in gram. Arachis oil is a liquid, but yet still it's written in gram. And all of this formulation typically adds up to 100 or 1,000. So read the formulation carefully to see how much that recipe adds up to. So the density information is given here for arachis oil and castor oil. We can easily convert from gram to milliliters for ease of measuring as opposed to weighing these viscous oily liquids. Now, when you have a question in Pharm Cal, it may be asking you to size reduce or enlarge a formula. And so typical proportion may be written like this, where you see the ratio symbol equal, right? Or the fraction format where you do cross multiplication, A times D, B times C, or we write it out like this, where we use extremes and means. And I'm going to show you about extremes and means in this recording, right? The means are the middle, B and C, and the extremes are A and D. If you should, when you see the subsequent slide coming, you'll recognize it works out to be the same as the common fraction expression that we're used to. So with fraction expression for proportion, A over B is equal to C over D. You cross multiply and you make the unknown the subject. Whereas for means and extreme, you multiply the means and you multiply the extremes. Write your mathematical statement. And if you look at it, this is not different from the cross multiplication over here, because it's A times D. There we go. A times D. B times C, which is B times C. So you have really been using means and extreme all this time when you lay out your ratio and proportion without even realizing it. This just is telling you the proper names ascribed to your calculation. So let's look at a calculation from the Pharmaceutical Practice textbook using methyl salicylate ointment as an example. So this formulation is by weight. It adds up to 1,000. But if you look at it carefully, the methyl salicylate is 500 grams, which is 50%, half of the formulation. The white soft paraffin is 250 grams, and 250 grams, that's a quarter of the formulation, right? And so here, if the request is to make 30 grams, all you have to do is use your dimensional analysis, 500 over 1,000 times 30 grams to get your answer, which is 15 grams. And as you can see here, you should be able to estimate your answer. Methyl salicylate is 500 grams, half of 1,000. So of course, I'm going to expect that my answer should have been 15 without doing the calculation, because half of 30 is 15 and methyl salicylate is half of the formulation. So students, these are simple ways you can check to see if you're plugging in the correct things in your calculator. Using ratio and proportion, 500 is to 1,000 as x is to 30. You do your cross multiplication and you get the same answer. So in this recording, I'm showing you different ways you can actually document. Now, let's look at the common fraction and the cross multiplication expression. So instead of drawing lines as we did here, we're going to set up the common fraction, where 500 is to 1,000, so x is to 30. And so, of course, my answer would be 15 grams. Now, ratio and proportion using the extremes and the mean would mean that we are going to write 500 is to 1,000 on this side of the expression, which is the methyl salicylate in 1,000. So therefore, x is in 30. That's how you will read it. When you set up your calculation, it would be that you are going to multiply the means, which is 1,000 times x, 500 times 30, and you make x the subject of the formulation. Now look at it carefully. Right here is the same as up here. So it doesn't matter how you lay it, your ratio and proportion, as long as the variables are on the correct side of your mathematical expression, you should get the same answer. So I've effectively shown you 4 ways that you can actually document enlarging or reducing a formula, and in this context we were reducing a formulation. Now there's still another method that you can use, which is the factor method. The factor method is looking at the pattern of what you're doing to see the decimal that you're reducing the fraction, the calculation by. So when you set up your calculation, 500 times 30 over 1,000, 30 is actually over the 1,000. You're moving from 1,000 grams to 30, and so my factor is 0.3. If you look in your pharmaceutical calculation textbook, the factor is the quantity to be prepared, in this case 30 grams, over the total for the formulation, which is 1,000. And so the factor is 0.3. Why is factor very nice to use? I love it for recipes that have lots of ingredients to cut down your writing time, because when you're in your exams or your tests or your assessments, time matters, your efficiency matters. So once you lay out the first ratio and proportion for the first ingredient and you figure out what your factor is, then you just use your factor to multiply the rest of the ingredient as I have shown you here. So you can cut down time in your assessments and use your time smartly. So here, all of the numbers in the master formula is being reduced by a factor of 0.03, and so this is my answer here. And if you look at the pattern, the numbers speak for themselves. 500 is half of 1,000, 15 is half of 30. 250 is a quarter of 1,000, 7.5 is a quarter of 30. And so you can actually tell if you are doing the correct thing. That brings to end the recording on using ratio and proportion to size reduce a formula, and you can always look in your book and practice how to enlarge a formula. What if we had asked for 2 kilograms, which is 2,000 grams? You would be enlarging the formula. The same principle applies. So happy practice with your pharmaceutical calculation. Remember, be anxious about nothing, but through diligent preparation, you can excel in the module. Thank you. Remember to like the video if it's beneficial and subscribe to the channel while I develop more content like this.